Yep. Oh.
Actually, there we go. Get you in.
Perfect.
Sorry, one sec.
Restart yours for the timeline.
Okay, there we go. That's better.
Perfect.
Yeah, that looks good. I think both are great.
Yeah.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Welcome to Meet a Vessel. Today's guest is Phalen Funk from Kaslo, British Columbia. Phalen and I met a few months ago at his studio down here when he was putting it together. And he was busy that day, but reached out to him recently because of a video that he put up of him playing his guitar behind his poetry. He's very talented, and I'm just so impressed with his artistic skills and his eagerness to share what he has. And let's get into it. So this episode we're calling "Understanding Despair," and it'll all make sense. Thanks for coming, Phalen.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, actually, I came to you, so I don't know what I'm talking about.
It works both ways.
So tell us what's going on here. So tell us what's going on with your studio.
Yeah, so I started the studio about 2 months ago, just as sort of a basis of operations for myself. I do a lot of artistic mediums, and it's kind of something I've always done, just maybe more in the private of my own home kind of thing. And when I first got back to Kaslo like a year ago, actually, me and Matthew Brown did a show at the Langham where we sang for everybody. And I had so many people coming up to me after being like, "That was amazing. I didn't know you sang at all." And it was like a great compliment, but also it kind of sent me in this internal realization of like, no one knows that I do that. You know, I've been so isolated with my art that it's like, no one knows any of this. And that was just kind of a weird moment of like how you see yourself versus how everyone else sees yourself. And it was kind of just time that I align these interests a little bit and be the person outward that I actually want and believe myself to be.
Yeah, we talked about that. I forgot that we had talked about that a bit. So when we met, the other thing that I found interesting was your last name.
Yeah.
So is that your real last name?
Yeah, Funk, Funk.
Funk, and tell me a little bit about the origins of the last name Funk.
Well, it's a huge family. I'm forgetting the word
The Mennonite?
Yeah, the Mennonite. There we go. Yeah, we both come from like a Mennonite family, and that was kind of a funny connection. A little bit of a religious experience, you know, kind of Christian based. Grew up kind of in that circle with just like a lot of relatives, and you know, doing the going to church on Sundays a little bit, and doing the after school extras, because for my mom that was just good childcare.
Right.
And whenever we get like a big family get together, they rent the hall up the lake, and we'll just absolutely fill it.
Mennonite family trees go real deep. They're really big. So were did your parents, other than going to church because it was a good place, did they teach you about God, or
no, not at all? Well, my dad was never really in the picture, and my mom she definitely has her spirituality to her. She's a bit of a hippie woman in BC, but there was never much pressure for that whatsoever. I think my mom always had a bit of a mindset of being a support figure for me, but just seeing and letting how I go out into the world be what I find and go out into the world. So there's never much like pressure about it. You know, I was pretty free to choose what I wanted that way.
And did you find yourself, like, how did you come to your understanding of spirituality, and how did you come to your understanding of God, or if there was a God, or any of that stuff?
Totally. Well, I obviously was raised in a little bit of like an agnostic mindset. I think I spent maybe a little bit of my teenage years being a little more atheist because I was getting pretty into computers and science and stuff. And I just like was maybe drawing a line that isn't there.
Right.
And I've been through a good amount of hardship in my life. I think a lot of us have. There's a certain amount of grief that gets compiled upon your character, and unhandled, unmanaged enough, that definitely turns to despair. And I truly believe that faith is the best antidote to despair.
And how did you conclude that?
Ooh. Um, Looking at cultures all over the world, different timelines. Like it doesn't seem to matter what culture or civilization you look at in the
Hmm.
history of our beautiful planet. You will find people's acclamation to faith.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. And so what makes do you think there's a right way to live life?
Oh,
Like,
absolutely not.
okay, maybe I'll
Um,
reword this. This is that. Do you think there's only so do you think the moral compass, do you think there's a moral compass that should be the driving force behind every human being? That's maybe a loaded
No, a
question.
little bit though. I think it's important to hold a good moral compass, absolutely, and the way you present yourself in the world. And I think it's only made a little bit easier by having that faith. When you're trying to set a goal structure and kind of create who you are, etc. Um, it's nice to have that structure and also that support and that community that comes with those interests and those people.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes community faith so much more. Maybe maybe not so much of a crutch, but just that fellowship of just being longing, wanting that sense of belonging.
Yeah.
So you had talked to me about, so your belief is Hellenistic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
I'm like a
so
modern day Hellenist. Yeah.
okay, so explain a Hellenist to us.
Okay. Well, it's basically just someone that really likes and believes in Greek mythology and
Okay,
those stories of the Greek pantheon of 13, um, you know, Zeus, etc. That's
yeah,
the one most people know.
yeah.
Um, but I guess I'm just going to rewind a bit to explain going into that. Looking at all these other cultures and their faiths, etc., and all these different civilizations that have that natural attunement, that in of itself was enough of a reason for me to have belief, right? And I think that the examples of more modern religions are mostly just an extension of culture. Like whatever being or spiritual thing is above us, or leading,
Mm-hmm.
is beyond human comprehension. To
Mm-hmm.
me, it's this primordial force, and that's kind of the point of it.
Right.
So all these examples, whether it's God or Allah or my Greek pantheon, it's they're just cultural extensions, and it's more about having a faith and believing in something, and living your life by a moral compass of that having that goal structure.
So who is in Greek mythology? Who is Pantheon? Like is
so
he like a
so
sun or anything, or like I'm curious.
So I could be wrong, but to me, pantheon is the word that is a word for like a collective of deities,
Okay.
right? So like the 13 is a pantheon. There
Okay.
was probably a character with a very similar name,
Okay.
absolutely. Um, yeah.
Interesting. No, the reason I ask is because I know a lot of in doing the research for my newest book, the Greek mythology came up a lot actually,
Hmm.
only because a lot of the Bible, New Testament of the Bible, is written in Greek to the Greeks. They were written at a time where the Corinthians were a Greek community, and Paul, for instance, in this case, was writing letters in Greek to the Corinthian church. He's writing all these letters. And so there was a lot of Greek mythology laced within there, and the ideas that came out. And there are lots of legends and stories about Jesus that came through Greek mythology and the ancient Babylons as well. So I found that really to be interesting. But the other thing I wanted to really want you to expand on was despair. So you said that the opposite of despair is faith.
Yeah, I think so. Um, you you can, like I think I was saying, you compile enough grief, it turns to despair. You have enough despair, you can either be nihilistic in your approach, which is
Mm-hmm.
totally fine, to just
Mm-hmm.
be like, the answer is there is none, and these things just happen, and you just kind of buck with it. Or you can take to faith and try to find more of the reason in things. I probably do a little bit of both. I think
Mm-hmm.
everyone does a little bit of both, but again, when you have enough despair and you're sitting in that, it's like a pit of desolation.
Right.
And you can either be nihilistic in your approach and just accept that pit and find your way to move through or with it. I find faith to be a better tool for trying to truly pull yourself out of it.
Yeah. And I think it's very interesting because when I wrote an abomination that causes desolation or that caused desolation, the word desolation really, really resonated with me because
Yeah.
most people in the Christian faith believe that desolation happened in 70 AD when the Temple Mount was when the Romans took over the Temple Mount in
Mm-hmm.
Jerusalem, and they said they left it desolate, and it was desolate right up until the time the Muslims took over the Temple Mount in 680 AD with Omar Salif Omar. The Muslim leader went on to the Temple Mount and they stopped it from being desolate.
Mm.
So that's what some people are trying to sail that. So when I looked up the word desolate, it meant sadness, grief, and despair. So not to give the book away, but that's what I found in my findings. And yeah, now I find that there's been this real push, especially through social media, through social networking, so social workers that are really trying to keep us in this despair, like through trauma bonding and trauma
Yeah.
this and trauma that. And really, we saw, and I saw, and you maybe saw this too, we saw a huge amount of people come to some kind of faith. They were sitting on the fence and they said, no, this is crazy. I mean, the unfortunate thing is a lot of Christians, which I have said I'm a Christian, I'd say I'm more Christian than I am anything else, just because that's what I've been studied in.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my friends say I'm religious, and I would say, yeah, I'm less religious now than I was yesterday, right? As I learn and I grow, right? I don't want to be religious. I want to be loving and caring and help people through this stuff. So so this is an interesting time, and I really, the despair was so important to me when we were talking about that. I was like, wow, Fallon, like you picked this up, like without studying the Bible, you picked up on the despair, and the only opposite way to get through despair is faith, and it's got to be faith in something. I mean, yeah, that's really, really powerful.
Even just a faith in yourself. It doesn't have to be
Yeah,
a big religious topic.
right,
I think it's good to talk about those tones, but just like having that belief and that structure that like
right,
you have the inner power to do what you need to do and
right,
pull through whatever the situation is.
right.
Build those stones and get it done.
Right. And I talk about that in a lot of my blogs where we hold on to the spells, which is the possession, right? So
Yeah.
all this different, um, comes out of the they would say witchcraft or whatever, casting spells. Every time we read something, we've been cast a spell. My book is a book of spells,
Yeah.
unfortunately. It really is, guys. Sorry. So is the Bible. Bible is a book of spells,
Yep.
right? So when we hold on to those spells, we become possessed. And so this is an interesting topic. A lot of people don't talk about it because we're not really taught that through school and whatever, how all this works and stuff. So yeah, so there's definitely a spiritual component to life and art and stuff like that. So
I like your connection to spell casting with the writing. Personally, a lot of my drive to writing is so my chosen topic my chosen deity in the pantheon of worship is Aphrodite, and that's the center of a lot of my art, almost all of my art is very very divine feminine focused. If I'm
Okay.
writing, a lot of it's like kind of more romantic poetry, a lot of it's that kind of vessel of imagery,
Right.
and when I'm writing, I really try to put myself in her garden, and I'm writing two or four Aphrodite, and that's a driving component.
Interesting. So she was, and what is her title? Like what is Aphrodite's title?
Well, she's the goddess of love.
Goddess of love.
There you go.
Isn't that awesome? Um, so we talked a little bit about the other day. We were talking about a little bit about politics. Believe it or not, we talked about politics. What do you think's going to happen now in the States? Anything profound?
I think it's easy to be afraid of extremes because they're extreme.
Right.
It's you see powerful figures doing powerful things, and it can be alarming. I try to maintain this faith towards a sense of balance, and that's where we're headed, is a place of balance, and
Hmm.
that these extreme energies, while they're daunting, small things don't change the world, and so you need these extremes to keep happening from both sides, and
Right.
and to find a sense of balance.
Right. Yeah, I saw a podcast with Joe Rogan and Trump, and Trump says we're in a time of cleansing, whatever the heck that means. But who knows? I'm either a Trump fan or not a Trump fan. I
Yeah.
just find it very interesting, and it definitely has captured our attention. Yeah. Hey, did you watch the Paul and
The Mike Tyson
Mike
fight. Of
Tyson
course I
fight?
did. Who
What
didn't?
did you think?
I actually found it quite endearing.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of negative thought and conversation around it, etc. But you know what? If I were that age,
Yeah.
and I had a chance to dip my toes back in my career as like a last showing like that, and sort of be like, hey, this is my last bout with it, and give that like final farewell, I think that's a good thing. And it's sort of a pass off the torch moment. Maybe not to Jake Paul specifically, because I
Right.
know how a lot of people would feel about that,
Oh,
but
yeah.
even just to like the next generation down, right? And I think that the actual fight between them and the way they conducted themselves on the stage was extremely sportsmanlike. And
Mm.
at the end of the day, did they have fun? I think so. And I'm not much concerned about more than that. You
Wow.
know?
Actually, you've had the best answer to that I've heard. Thank you. No, that's good. And I think that's the cool thing that's what I really resonated with you is that, yeah, you have a way of looking at the positive through all that and seeing the love,
Yeah.
and that's really what it's all about is just trying to find the love in all those pieces. I've heard all the commentary. I heard a guy yesterday saying that on CBC saying like, what did we expect? I mean, he's 58 years old and he's 28
Yeah.
years old. Like, come on, guys. Like, what did you expect? And just how we my generation, I grew up, as a teenager in the '80s, watching Mike Tyson was just wow. He was a force, man. Like
Oh
he
yeah.
was a force, but he hasn't been a force since 1988,
No,
and
totally.
and he's lost almost all his fights through the '90s. So what did
Yeah.
we expect that
Yeah.
some guy is just going to come out there and so no, I love how you address that. That's
Yeah. I think
perfect.
this was theater, not a true contest of strength. I don't think
Right,
that this usurps Tyson's title or anything
right,
like that. It
right.
was a bond between two men, man.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, that's really good. I love
Okay.
it. Is
And
there
so
anything, after all this, Mike Tyson's and Jake Paul's and Trump's and let's get a little more real.
all right.
Okay, what about Kaslo? Anything you see in Kaslo? What's working in Kaslo
Hmm.
and is there anything is there a need in Kaslo that you think that hasn't been addressed?
All right. So I came back to Kaslo about a year ago, um, largely because I needed a place to come back and heal after a turbulent, grief-filled time.
Hmm.
But I had spent that previous summer coming back here and visiting a ton. And what was remarkable to me was just how much art was actively practiced here. Basically, every day, granted, it was like summer and beautiful days, but
Hmm.
basically, but every day I would just like walk down the street and there'd be like live music somewhere. And there's just like so much creation. And I think a little bit of that is just coming out of COVID. You know, COVID really
Hmm.
made everyone hit a wall and stop. And it was almost like a surge of renaissance in the world of so many
Hmm.
people just being like stuck with what else do you do? And they're like, well, I used to do all this art before I had a 9 to 5, you know,
Hmm.
and so many people got that chance to like get back to that creative side. And I think we're just still riding that wave. And that's just like the world we live in now is this like post renaissance again. And yeah, there's just such a fruition of artists and so many people painting and making music and trying to do dioramas and whatever it is, you know. So many people are more willing to like put themselves out into the world a little bit, and that's a little bit of the purpose of my studio, honestly. So if you're watching this, is like, by all means, come by, let's make some art. You know,
Right.
I want it to be this hub of creators, you know. I
And
want to support that environment in Kaslo. And
yeah,
yeah,
do you see any needs in Kaslo that haven't been addressed, or do you think it's pretty straightforward
I
here?
mean, like minor housing crisis and stuff like
Yeah,
that, you know, the typical
the
going
typical stuff.
ons.
How about
But
Chinese food on a Saturday afternoon? No, I'm just
well,
teasing.
you can kind of get that at
I
from the
think so.
golf
Yeah, they're
course. Yeah.
great, by the way. If you haven't had their Chinese food, it's
Yeah.
honestly one of the best Chinese food
Super
places,
good.
and yeah, I love their food. So, yeah, I guess living in a small town, it's funny. I've been here 2 years now,
Yeah.
and um,
You're missing 7-Eleven already,
uh,
eh?
and we talked a bit before about about just how consumed we are.
Mm,
And so in Kaslo, it gave me this opportunity just to relax and just stop being so damn consumed. And
yeah,
and it can get really lonely here, especially if you're
totally.
if you don't know anybody. And so I found that to be really really a difficult thing to overcome, but it's coming, and I think meeting people like yourself has been really
Yeah.
good, and Zia has been amazing, and yeah, just there's been a number of guys that I'm really excited to have coffee with and what have you. But yeah, so that's been one of the tough things about Kaslo. It's just because I've been so used to going to 7-Eleven to grab
Totally.
that midnight snack. Well, not that I did that lots, but it's there if you need it, right?
Totally.
Whereas here, trying to find poutine on a Wednesday afternoon might be difficult.
Yeah.
So,
So
so
you hit a light bulb in my head there with just the word consumption
right,
and all this artistry, etc. I think there's an important axis, an internal axis of living your life, of balancing how much you consume versus how much you create.
right,
And it almost follows along with just like this base level of anxiety. I know that I get a lot more anxiety, and one of the axes I'll look at in my life is just how much have I been consuming versus how much have I been creating and putting out into the world. And
right,
that even just comes down to, how much we're scrolling now. You're spending hours and hours just consuming.
right,
And honestly, sometimes the antidote to that is just go clean your room and make dinner, because
right,
that's creating, that's putting energy back out into the world.
right.
And you need to put as much energy out into the world as you take in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I just had this discussion with my son recently. Um, he's going through some personal stuff, and I was trying to help him. I says, one of the best things you can do, get up every morning and make your bed.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds really like I've even had the attitude, well, I'm just going to sleep in it tonight anyway, so why make it? But
Yeah.
there's just something about making your bed every day just helps
Totally.
you to refresh. It's a new day. Stuff's going to happen today, or and and then at the end of the day, when it's all done, you have a nice freshly made bed. It's just
Totally.
it's a really neat thing, and it really helps with the psyche for sure. So
Yeah.
um,
Well, and it's dopamine, right? To get scientific about it a little bit,
yeah,
making your bed's not hard, right? I
no,
think we can agree that making your bed's
no,
not hard.
it's not hard.
And that is the first thing in the day that's readily available for you to accomplish and get your first surge of dopamine in the morning.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Very true. So, in all that stuff, so I think we've been going about 20 minutes. Is
Yeah.
there any last thoughts?
Um, Well, I'm working on my book a lot lately. That's been kind
Okay.
of the prime focus of my art. I've got a bunch of paintings on the wall. I've got some air dried clay coming in, so I can do some work with that and paint that. And I've got all my music stuff happening. But my main focus right now is my book. It's sort of a um, collection of my poetry slash a bit of a biography, mostly just kind of writing about why I'm writing these things and these stories and poems, and not so much
Hmm.
explaining them, because I don't like explaining art. I think
Hmm.
the beholder, whatever you take from it is what's meant to be.
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm hoping to travel next year and have that as something I can read from and portray and be kind of the center of why I'm going around doing this.
Can you share us a poem?
Share with you a poem. Well, my phone's over there. Well, this is the opener to my book.
Okay.
Um, Ever since the day I opened my eyes, I wanted to be one of the greats. And maybe that's because that's all I saw. The gentle rocking of a cradle made the lights and shadows dance. I saw my mother, my aunt, and friends who are no longer with us. Laughter, the sizzling of food in the kitchen, a debate about pickles. Everything was great. I tried to speak, to join, but I couldn't yet. I hadn't learned how. Ever since the day I started walking, I wanted to be one of the greats. I wanted to run, swim, and fly, with no reason to why besides I must. Propel myself forward with the momentum and trajectory that I wouldn't rust. Ever since the day I started loving, I wanted to be one of the greats. The kind considered at every debate. The kindest, considerate pickle, who waited too long to be pulled from the jar and had to shatter it himself. Now it's lonely on the top shelf. Ever since the day I started sinking, I wanted to be one of the greats. Stepped on the floor and I fell through the ceiling, tainted by each avenue of life I find so appealing. The modern entrapment of a gifted mind, I'd lose 143 points to make a compass with the last four.
Wow. Thank you, Phil.
Yeah.
When I was young, probably around 8 years old, I remember writing or drawing a picture of a crow looking down on an old lady.
Yeah.
And the teacher had called my dad in. And I can't remember all the details, but I remember her putting this picture over a picture that I had taken it from. And
Hmm.
I had free drawn it. And just by looking at the picture, I free drawn it. And it was almost verbatim. It was so well done at 8 years old, say.
Mhm.
And I remember thinking to myself, what is the big deal? Like why like I felt that everybody had that talent or anybody
Yeah.
could do that. My dad had said to me when I was very young that I'd ask him, I'd say, Dad, can you do this or can you do that? And he'd say, Yeah. Has it been done before? And I'd say, Yeah. Did somebody build it? He said, Yeah. He says, Well, if somebody built it, you can build it too. Like, so I had this in my mind that everybody has talent. They just
Mhm.
have to put their mind to it. I still believe that. So by the time I hit grade 8, I didn't want to do art. I wasn't very big in art because everybody kept pushing me to do, especially my dad,
Yeah.
pushing me to do art. And I was like, no, I'm going to do something that nobody else is doing. So I started playing the French horn because nobody else would pick the French horn. So I'll do it because if nobody else is doing it, I didn't want to be the trumpet player because all the boys wanted to be trumpet players and
It's
all the
true.
girls wanted to be flute or clarinet players. Um, but the other thing that always went on in my mind is that I saw talent and Fallon, I understood talent and I never put myself in that category.
Hmm.
And so I want to encourage you because your talent is amazing. Walking around, seeing your art, and um, listening to your words. That's when you speak your words, you've read your words and your poems. They're beautiful. They're really well done. So keep up the good work and just keep sharing love, and that's really what this is all about. And life is about, yes, life is about, there's despair, but through it all, how do we find faith in despair, and how do we move out of this craziness to find love in the most undesirable places, and when we're down and out, who do we call on, and sometimes some people call from within and some people call from without, but at the end of the day, having that faith, I think, was so important in our discussions last week.
Totally.
Yeah. So anyways, that was awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, viewers, for spending some time with us. Trying to make these around 20 minutes so that so you don't get bored with us. But at the end of the day, thank you again for sharing this time with us, and how wonderful it was to meet Phalen and just understand how he came to his uh, not only his spiritual life, but also his artistic life, the gifts that he's been given by something higher than ourselves. So he is a vessel, and I want to thank you again. So God bless.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. However, I don't even know how I should. I don't know if I want to end them. I'm not sure how I want to end these. I hadn't really thought about it. I think the idea of meeting a vessel is important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for spending the time with us.
I feel like, to all our other vessels out there, thank you.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. Okay. I want to thank everybody for joining us. That was wonderful. Thank you, Phalen. It was awesome. We're going to meet again. We're probably going to podcast again. We got lots to talk about. We definitely have. We're definitely on the same page. And if you want to see some art, come on down to Phalen's studio in Kaslo, British Columbia. Um, uh, Again, tell me what your email or your website address. What was your website? Do you have a
I don't have a
website?
website yet, but
What's
I'm
your
working on
Facebook,
it. So
right?
maybe this will get me to like put it up there. But
Okay.
it's Interlude Studios.
Okay.
And you can probably find that on Instagram. Otherwise, just find me, Phalen Funk, on pretty much every social outlet. I
Okay.
post stuff: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc.
Okay. Phalen Funk is, and how do you spell Phalen?
PHALEN FUNK.
FUNK.
Yeah.
Thank you to our vessel, Phalen Funk. And when you go through your day, be a vessel. Be the best vessel of yourself that you can be. Show love and peace and kindness. It's the only way to get through this life of chaos. God bless. I don't know if I want the God bless. Just a sec. Because there's so many people that are triggered by it.
No, I know
It's
what you mean.
weird. It's like this
Yeah.
weird. Why are people triggered by the word God? I know lots of people are triggered by the word God. It just is so weird. In the Christian circle, I think it's because the Christians have adopted that, and so many people don't want to associate themselves with Christians because of their. Because there's some really crappy people out there that call themselves Christians.
Yeah.
Just like there's very crappy people out there that call themselves everything else, right? So, there's just crappy people. So I don't want to use that word. How am I going to sign off? I like the be a vessel thing. Okay. Where are we at here? 9 minutes. Okay, so let me think about this a little bit. What do you think?
I'm just making sure you can see where we're at. Okay. Makes editing easier.
Yeah, it does. Okay, I think I'm good. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Phalen.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you go through your days and you've read my blogs, you'll understand that it's all about being a vessel. So through your days, through your weeks, through your hours, when you're in despair and you're having a hard time, look up to something. Find faith in something. I think we all learn that. And be a vessel. Have a good day. Have a good day. Have a fun day. Ah, I don't like it.
I know. I'm hearing you.
Something profound. Something profound. Something profound that's not profound. There's something profound that's not.